Okay, today we're going to start Yud Tes Amud Aleph from V'harei Mincha, T'ksiv Bechuka. It's, let's see, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 lines from the bottom. Thank Hashem that you're able to learn Torah every day. Plus, I learned basic English. Hillel, he sets up over here every morning. Hashkim V'haref. They're always the first. And, okay. So we learned a statement. Who started this? Rav. It was the statement from Rav. It says anywhere where it says Torah and Chukah, it means it's ma'akev. Those two words, if you see those words in the pasuk, those are the critical words. It means that if you don't perform it in the specified manner, then it's not going to be acceptable. It's ma'akev. Ma'akev means that service is essential to the validity. So we went back and forth over here. What about this? What about that? We said, we ended up saying that if it says the word Torah, it still needs the word Chukah. But if it says Chukah, then that's going to be satisfactory to tell me that it's Ma'akev. When I asks now, V'harei Mincha, T'ksiv Bechuka. Mincha says Chukah. V'amar Rav. And Rav said, what does it say about the Chukah? It says Chok Olam. What's exactly the pasuk? The pasuk says, "Kol zachar b'mnei Aaron yoichal." Maybe Chok Olam. Little aleph. And there's a lot of notes being thrown around over here. But notes here and there. Yoichlena. That's what it says. It's missing the word Yoichlena. It's in Kedoshim. That's in the side of the Gemara. So. However, V'amar Rav, Kol makom shechzer hakasa b'Torah mincha ein el la'akev yechzer and la'yechzer lai. Rav says that the word chukah isn't satisfactory. It's like a contradiction in Rav. Rav says that the word chukah in one place, he says if it says the word chukah, it's enough. Comes to the carbon mincha, it says if the Torah repeats that, it says it twice. That's another rule that we have. If it says it twice, then it's essential. And if it doesn't repeat it, then it's not essential. 1 second. You told me that chukah was good enough to make it essential. And we know that it says chukah. So now what you have like contradictory rules over here. When it says Shani Hassam, the word chukah that it says by the mincha is not going to help us. Chi ksiva chukah achila ksiva. Where does it say the word chukah? That it says by the eating of the mincha, not by this the process of the service of the mincha. Umar says, well, that's if it says chukah by the achila, that means that the service is not essential unless it repeats the service twice. So the chukah by achila, it doesn't work. What about the lechem apanim? By the lechem apanim, it also says chukah, but it says chukah by the eating of the lechem apanim. What does it say? It says, "Va'achlua b'makom kadosh ki kodesh kadashim hilai meish Hashem chok olam." By the eating of it, it should be eaten in the holy place. It is holy of holy from the fire of Hashem chok olam, an everlasting statute. So, and we say over there utanan, and we have a mishnah. Shnei sedarim makvin zeh the 2 rows of the loaves of there's 6 and 6, 12 loaves, the 12 loaves of the shobran. There's 2 piles, 2 stacks. They're ma'akev one another. In other words, if they're missing one, then it's not valid. And the 2 spoons of frankincense are ma'akev one another. And they're ma'akev each other. If you don't have the bazichan, then the loaves are no good. If you don't have the loaves, the bazichan are no good. Which means that each one of those is essential. Where do we get that from? From the word chukah. Where does it say chukah? By achila, by the eating. You told me that chukah by achila doesn't make it essential. Ella kol hecha deksiva achila kula milsa ksiva. Rather, it must be that when it says chukah, even by the achila, it's referring to everything. If that's the case, back to our original question, that by the mincha it says chukah by achila, which that should be considered essential. So why does Rav require that it's Only if it's repeated is it essential, not if it says it once. Why do we need that? Even if it says, the fact that it says chukah should be satisfactory. So Shani Hassam, you can't ask this question from the Karban Mincha because there's a special halacha by the Mincha. Because the Amar Kra Migirsha Mishamna says, well, there's different versions here. One version says Misalta Mishamna, Migirsha Mishamna. It says something very specific. It says from its flour, from its oil. Now, the fact that it's saying from its flour and from its oil, it's coming to tell me that there's certain things over here that are going to be ma'akiv. That means I'm going to need to have all the flour and all the oil. I can't have anything missing. Why do you have to do that? Why do you have to specify the flour and the oil that you can't have anything missing? We already have the word chukah. You didn't have to specify that. So it must be geresh v'shemen ma'akvin ve'in davar achim ma'akiv. Even though it uses the word chukah, only the flour and the oil is going to be ma'akiv. Now Rashi adds in, why does flour and oil ma'akiv? Because that gets repeated. The flour and the oil gets repeated. So this is where Rav says that by the mincha it's going to be different. Only when it's repeated is it going to be ma'akiv, not just the word chukah. Vein davarach ma'akiv. Wasn't valid. And where do we learn that from? From here. There's layers of understanding. So I have something in the Shulchan Aruch, but the background to the Shulchan Aruch is the Gemara or let's say the Rishonim. The background to the Rishonim is the Gemara. The background to the Gemara is the Mishnah. The background to the Mishnah is the Pasuk. So each one, it's layered. Each one is telling me the background to something else. Yeah, that was the outcome of this. So this is going back to the source. Where do we know it from the pasuk? That was just stating the rule. Here, it's telling me where I got the rule from. Ufa Amarav. We started learning. I made a suggestion that Gufa is when there's an Amaraic statement, and then and then Amar Mar is when there's a Tanaic statement. So the word Gufa, and it was pretty much accurate, 90-something% of the time. Though there were exceptions. So Gufa, we learned before. We had this text in passing. And now we're going to analyze it more in detail. Rav said, mincha whenever something is repeated, that's going to be ma'akiv. Shmuel says, Geresh v'shemen ma'akiv. Shmuel says that only the amount of flour and oil is makiv, but not other things. Back to Gemara, the word tana means shana, means to repeat. It's the Aramaic term for repeating. Tana is shana. The taf and shin are interchangeable. Gemara has this rhetorical question. Shmuel afgav the tana bekra, lay ma'akva lay, maybe lay ma'akva. Take out the lay. Even though the pasuk repeats it, it's not going to be essential. No, it has to be essential. If the Torah repeats it, the first time is like more suggestion. Second time makes it essential. So what's the machlekes Rav and Shmuel? They're arguing about something very specific. Arguing about if you can make a scoop for the size of a kaimet. So it says the Tanya. It says like this. Malay kumtzei b'kumtzei. It says it twice in the pasuk. It says the scoop should be malay kumtzei, a scoop full. Then it says bikumtzei, with his scoop, with his fingers, bikumtzei, which mean with his fingers doing the scoop. The fact that it says bikumtzei tells me that you can't make a measuring cup for the kaimetz. Rav holds Hanami Tana Bekra, that this is also repeated. Because I have a pasuk that says that you should. This pasuk is referring to the inauguration of the tabernacle. Over there it says that he will bring the mincha. Aaron brings the mincha, and he fills his scoop with it. He'll take a scoopful. Now, kappa means his fistful, his handful, which means a scoop, but it means his hand. It's not a utensil. It means with his hand. So
his palm.
His palm.
So that would make sense.
Right. The full palmful. Shmuel. So the Rav says that how do we know that you can't use a scoop? Because it says. Rav says, how do you know that you can't make a scoop? Because it says twice. It says kapai, and it says bekumtzei. Yeah? So that anything that says twice means it's essential. Shmuel says, there's Mishal Alfinan. Shmuel says that you can't learn anything from a temporary law. That was a one-time law. It says that was referring to the inauguration ceremony. That's not telling me the laws of all future times. So now you're coming to teach me halachos of future times that you can't learn from that. It's
not one of Rambam's rules.
Yeah, the Rambam writes counting a mitzvah that we don't count mitzvahs that were only for one time. In the 613 is not that Moshe said that everyone should come stand by the in between the staffs of or whatever. The mitzvah that doesn't include that Aaron should lift up the Levium, at that time. That's not those were all temporary. It's 613. Now we're not talking about how to get the number 613. Now we're talking about if something is going to be essential or not, and what we're going to. If it says it twice, it's essential. So we would have to have? It would have to be.
I only mentioned it because we started Rambam.
You do 3 chapters?
No, you cannot just do a mitzvah.
No, you don't.
It's still a Bible. Sure.
Right. But that's going to be a little confusing because now we're saying laws that are written in the Torah but are only temporary laws. Okay? So why is it in the Torah? It's only temporary. Well, there's lessons that we learn from it, but it's not that the law continues, just like the prophecies. There's lessons that we learn from those prophecies, even though those prophecies aren't necessarily applicable today. There are prophecies about Nebuchadnezzar, and there are prophecies about some, right? But there's lessons that were relevant. So Shmuel holds that you can't learn from this. So where does Shmuel actually learn it from? Shmuel said, Shmuel holds that you're allowed to make a scoop. Because he holds that the fact that it says twice that you have to use his hand is not repeated. It only says it once. It says it twice. It says that one was a temporary law that you can't learn from. The Gemara asks, Shmuel doesn't learn, says that you can't learn things from future generations for things that were only applicable in one generation. But we have a Mishnah as follows. Mishnah says, Klei halach, mekach mesalach. You have certain utensils in the temple that were used for liquid measures, for liquid things. So if you put something liquid inside one of those liquid bowls, so then that would consecrate it. Midas yavish, Mikachin as a yavish. Why does it say over here midas, not clay? What's the gimel? I don't know. By clay alach, didn't we say midas? Midas alach. Notice it's like inconsistent. Okay, so midas yavish mikachin as a yavish. The dry measures will consecrate the dry food. Then clay alach mikachin as a yavish, but liquid vessels won't consecrate dry food. And dry measures won't consecrate liquid.
Didn't we have one exception to that? One of the ones which were for one thing.
Bamar Shmuel, Dr. Stein and Shmuel say, Leishanu elamides. That's only when it comes to the measurements. Avol mizrakis mekachim, but when it comes to the bowls that were used for sprinkling the blood, it does consecrate. It says that when they offered the inauguration offering with the princes, they brought the Nasiim, brought their offering. It says that they brought these mizrakas. They were filled with flour. Now, the mizrak is not supposed to be filled with flour. It's supposed to be filled with blood. That was used for blood. They were coming as a gift to the temple, but they filled it with flour. So Shmuel learns, or Shmuel's going to accept this Mishnah that says, it's not just he accepts this Mishnah. Shmuel says that the Mishnah is only talking about measurements of liquid, but when it comes to the mizrakais, he says that will consecrate something dry. And where does he learn it from? From a law that was temporary. See, Shmuel does learn from temporary. So Shani Hassam, the Tana Bekra, traces him, and Shmuel says, well, that's not a comparison. You know how many times it says the laws of how many times it repeats the inauguration, those offerings? It says 12 times. So you read on Chodesh Nisan, right? You read it every single day of the first 12 days of Nisan. We're reading Shnei Mleim Keteiros, Shnei Mleim Seilas. Okay. Amalei Rav Kana Rav Asi Rav. Remember that Rav was the one that said that only something that's repeated is going to be ma'akiv. So Rav Kana and Rav Asi are two students of Rav. Very often they ask Rav questions. Sometimes Rav remains silent. Bari Agasha, what about the bringing close to the altar? The Tana Bekra, that the pasuk repeats it, Shana Bekra, right? And we know that to bring it close to the altar of the carbon mincha, which was done by certain menachos, and it's not makiv. We had in our Mishnah, Loi Megish, right? Loi Higish, gonna be Kshera. Loi Higish is Bisek Kshera. It says twice that you're supposed to do it. Where it says Man Tana Bay, where do we see that it was repeated? That little dalid. My Tana Bay, not man, but my. Okay, man means whom. My means what. What, like what, where does it get repeated? The ksiv, because I have a pasuk that says, we have another pasuk that says, what's the first pasuk? Gemara's only giving me one pasuk. I guess the other pasuk is obvious somewhere. So it's quoting me the second pasuk. What's the hey over here? Supposed to take out the words B'nai Aaron L'fnei Hashem. Maybe Leviticus 6:7. Yeah. But they have two in Leviticus 6:7. So one is that's one pasuk, and then I have Leviticus 7. in Leviticus 7, does it give you a verse? They're changing the source of the pasuk, and it says by me. They have a different pasuk. Okay, so I'm not sure what the other source is, but apparently there's two sources for this. So, and they're asking that you see it gets repeated. They're quoting another pasuk. It says, so that's not coming to tell me the law that you have to bring it close to Hashem so that it becomes essential. That's just telling me that when you bring it close, this is where you're supposed to bring it to, the location. The Tanya was started in a Bryce, Hashem says that you have to bring it to in front of Hashem. Yachal b'mayrav. What does it mean you bring it in front of Hashem? It means you bring it to the entrance to the sanctuary, to the Heichal. Where's the entrance to the Heichal? It's on the west, right? On the west. Yes, to the two psukim. So bring it. In 2:8, it says that she shall bring it to the altar, and it's also stated in 6:7. Let me find the pasuk in 2:8. Eric B is pasuk pass. Yeah, so the Koran gives us the original pasuk. It says ve'ivesa as a mincha sheyasem el Hashem bekriva el hakayin v'yigisha el mizbeach. The pasuk says you have to bring it to the altar. Yigisha, that's in 2:8. That's the pasuk at the beginning. That's the original pasuk. Now we quoted another pasuk, which says Hakir v'yisrael lifnei Hashem. So it says, well, what the second pasuk is not really telling me that you have to do it. It's telling me just where you are supposed to do it. Because I could have thought that you bring it to the Ma'ariv, bring it to the west. It means you bring it just in front of the entrance, front of the doorway. It says no, you bring it to the front of the altar. The front of the altar, not necessarily in front of the doorway. If it says the front of the altar, maybe you bring it to the south, by the ramp. The ramp is on the south side. It says no, you have to bring it in front of Hashem, which is on the west. Okay, so how do you do both of those? You bring it to the southwest corner, to the point of the corner, and that should be satisfactory. That's a very important corner point. That's where they pour the wine and the blood and everything, all the remnants, everything gets poured over there, and that's where you bring the mincha closer. Reb Lezer says, Yachli Geshen Marava Shel Keren. Lidroima Shel Keren. Maybe you bring it to the south of the corner or to the west of the corner. Amrit, we say like this. I have two ways of reading the pasuk, of fulfilling the pasuk. I can do one. If I fulfill it one way, then I'm only fulfilling one pasuk and I'm neglecting the other pasuk. If I do it the other way, I'm fulfilling one pasuk and I'm neglecting the other pasuk. However, I have another way. That you can fulfill one and you can fulfill both. I choose the way where I can fulfill both of them. Because when you say in front of Hashem, what does that mean? B'mayrav means the west. But then you're not fulfilling what it says in the second chapter, where it says you're supposed to bring it to the front of the altar, which is on the south. When you say you do it into the front of the altar, which is on the south, you're still fulfilling Lifnei Hashem. Now, how do you do that? How do you fulfill it if you come to the south and you're not you're not in the west? I don't know if you have a picture in your Rashi, but my picture is off. But really, according to this, what we're supposed to do is we're supposed to move. You know that game, Rush Hour? You don't know Rush Hour? It's a cute game. It's they put cars on this thing, and it can only move either up and down like this. Yeah. You have to try to get the car, get it out of the traffic. You have to move the cars this way and that way to get it out. When you see it,
Shabbos.
it's a Shabbos game. Yeah.
Cars on Shabbos.
So anyway, over here,
I think I have the same picture. What's off about it?
what's off is I want the Mizbeach to be moved all the way towards the north, so that the corner of the Mizbeach will be directly in front of the Heichal.
You want, okay.
But I'm saying rush hour, you got to move that Mizbeach upwards.
You want it in front of the door.
I want the corner in front of the door. Here we have the wrong corner in front of the door. Here we have the northwest. I want the southwest in front of the door for the way we're learning it now.
That the orientation is correct here, isn't it? The orientation.
And yeah, the only thing is that in the way the Gemara concludes is that it's supposed to be much more north. The Mizbeach is supposed to be north, which would leave that corner to be directly in front of the Heichel, and you'll be able to fulfill both psukim. It will be on the face of the Mizbeach, and it will also be in front of the Lefnei Hashem, in front of the Heichel.
So the box around the picture is too small. That's what.
No, I don't think so. You see here. Up here is the Heichel, right? Up here is the Heichel. Down here is the Mizbeach. Yeah. Yeah.
But that's the wrong one.
I know, it's showing what he's going to do rush hour.
This picture here. Yeah. See that picture?
I see it.
I want that Mizbeach be moved all the way forward.
But I'm saying the box is too small because there was a certain amount of space to the north of the Mizbeach.
They still could have done it better.
Okay.
I guess what that picture was doing was it was explaining the beginning of the Gemara. They're saying how are we going to do this, and then we answered it that we move it. Maskifla Rav Huna. Rav Huna goes back and he has a question on Rav. We had Rav Asi and Rav Kana are students of Rav. Now we have Rav Huna. Rav Huna is a major student of Rav. Maskif Lei, probably. What's the ches? No. They take off, it's not Rav Huna, it's Rav Avia. Switch it. Ari Melach, what about salt? Leitana Bekra, that the pasuk doesn't repeat it, and nevertheless Makva Bay, nevertheless it's essential. Dutanya, because we have a brisa. Brisa says bris melach olam, that salt on the sacrifice is an everlasting bris covenant. Shetehi bris amura b'melach, that there's a covenant given to the salt. Rabbi Yehuda, that's the words of Rabbi Yehuda. That means he can never stop bringing the salt. Now, Reb Shimon, who argues with Rabbi Yehuda, but he doesn't actually argue in law with Rabbi Yehuda, he just argues on where we get this from. Reb Shimon Aimer, so Machlekes Rabbi Yehuda and Reb Shimon, two students of Rabbi Akiva. Reb Shimon Aimer nemer kan bris melech elam, nemer la'alam bris kunas elam. It says in one place, bris melech elam, the everlasting covenant to the salt. And then it says everlasting covenant to the kayanim. Just like you can't bring a sacrifice without a kayan, you also can't bring a sacrifice without salt. So both of them are agreeing that you need to have salt. If you don't have salt, it's essential. Problem is that it's not repeated in the pasuk. According to Rav, it shouldn't be essential. Amar Rav Yosef says, Rav Ketana Didan Svirala. You quoted a brisa that says that the salt is essential, and now you have a kasha on Rav. Because how did it become essential? Rav holds like our Mishnah that holds the salt is not essential. It's not a kasha on Rav. It's a machlekes. Rav goes like our Mishnah. Our Mishnah says loy malach is kosher. If you don't bring salt, you didn't put salt on the mincha, on the kaimitz, it's going to be kosher. Amalei Abaya. Abaya says that's the way you learned our Mishnah. Tells to Rav Yosef. Rav Yosef is Abaya's teacher. Says Yihachi lo yatzak nami lo yatzak klal. You think when the Mishnah said that you didn't salt it, I mean you didn't salt it at all? If that's the case, then when it says you didn't pour the oil, it would mean you didn't pour the oil at all. It says, and we learned Ella lo yatsa kayin elazar. We learned the whole Mishnah different. We said that the oil wasn't poured by a kayin, but of course it was poured. It was just poured by a zar. We said that would be acceptable. So achinami lo malach kayin elazar. So also be here. Of course you put on salt. It just wasn't salt. It wasn't done by the kayin. It was done by someone that wasn't the kayin. We said that would be acceptable. Not that it wasn't salt. Amalei. Yosef says back. How do you get a zar on the mizbeach? Where do you do the salting? On the mizbeach. You can't get a zar. A zar can't go on the mizbeach. Yeah, that's the expression. Azavi a yavan in sukkah. Ever heard that? Yiddish expressing something that's very out of place, like azavi a yavan in sukkah. Yavan doesn't mean Greek. It's Yiddish for Ivan. Ivan was the Russian, like John, like in America, you'd say someone not Jewish, you'd say John something, John Smith. So, so in Russia they used the Ivan. Ivan meant the non-Jew. So if something was very out of place, it would be like Azavi a Yavan in Sukkah. And maybe Ivan comes from, I don't know Russian, but maybe Ivan means Greek. Maybe like Yavan. Yeah. Anyway, they're saying like, what's a zar doing on the mizbeach? The zar can't go on the mizbeach, so obviously the Mishnah must mean that it wasn't done at all, and it's still going to be kosher.
So where is the salt kept on the mizbeach?
Yeah, there was like a little indent in the mizbeach where they kept salt there.
That's why we always keep salt on the table.
That's one of the reasons. Yeah, the Gemara has the Tosfos in Brachos has another reason. That because when we wash our hands, we can't talk Torah. So as an atonement for not talking Torah during that time, as a protection, we have salt on the table, which the salt is a type of protection. Yeah. Another, if you want, you could say, Kivan the ksiv be bris, command the tana be kra damya. You can answer it differently. We can say that salt is essential. How's it going to fit with Rav? Rav says only if it's repeated. Is it? So, says, well, it uses the word bris. The word bris is as if it's repeated. Okay. The Gemara now asks, what do you mean it wasn't repeated? The whole discussion was all based on an assumption that it only says it once. We have clearly another source, another pasuk. It says, that pasuk doesn't count. Because we need it for what it says in the Brayse. If it would say just that a sacrifice needs to have salt, the dam. Call carbon. If it would say any carbon with salt, then I would say that you even have to salt the wood that's being brought, or you maybe have to salt the blood that's being washed. Shnikr carbon. Because those are also called the carbon. Mincha, so it says mincha. Just like the mincha, you have to just accept this term. You're going to learn means that you can't bring it alone. You need to bring supplementary things together with it. You can't just bring a mincha. You bring a mincha, what has to come along? You need wood to burn it, right? So just like a mincha, which requires other things to come along with it. Also, anything else that requires other things to come along with it, like any sacrifice that requires wood to burn it, also requires salt. How do you know that the way that we're going to learn? So what we're looking for here is what's unique about mincha. He said, well, mincha requires other things along with it, wood to burn the mincha. Says maybe that's not the pshat. Maybe what's unique about mincha is that the mincha is matir other things. That when you bring the kaimitz, you can eat the shirayim. Now, if that's the case, afkal shematir. Anything else that's matir, you'd have to need salt. Give me another example of a matir. Dam. Avi dam shematir. You sprinkle the blood. You can now eat the carbon. Talmud Laimar, so the pasuk says, "Mi'al minchascha v'lo mi'al damcha." I need a special pasuk to tell me how to learn this. Because I could have thought that the uniqueness of mincha is that it's a matir, that it permits something else to happen. It says no. The uniqueness of the mincha is that you need wood to come along to burn it, and that would not include blood. And how do I learn this? Because it says, Me'al minchascha v'lei me'al damcha. Yachal te mincha kul tuna melech. Maybe the entire mincha requires salt. Amalemar karban tuna melech, ein mincha kula tuna melech. Only the part that gets put on the altar, which is the kaimetz. Mainly ala kaimetz. Minayin l'rabbi says levina. How do you know the levina requires salt? Marban yes levina shkim b'yim mikliyachad, because it comes in the same vessel. So therefore, same vessel. Okay, it also gets salt. Minayin l'rabbi says levina bab fnei. How do you know if you bring levina on its own, they have to put salt on it? Levina bab b'bazichin. What about the levina that comes in the spoons put together with the showbread? Ba'ktairis. Ba'ktairis requires salt? No. They take that out. That's what's the Zion over here. How does we put salt on the ktairis? Maybe I'm supposed to read it. No. I don't know. Let me take a look at that. Where is it derived to include in the requirements to be salted the frankincense that comes in bowls together with the showbread and the incense? Okay, let's wait. We'll see what happens in the Gemara. The Gemara is going to analyze each one of these. Minchas Kainim. What about the Minchas Kainim? If a Kain, there's no Kaimitz over there. Minchas Kain Mashiach, or if the Kain Gadol brings a Mincha. Minchas Nesachim. The Mincha that comes together with the sacrifice, the libations. Emuri Chatas. What about the limbs that are put on the altar of a Chatas offering? Emuri Hashem. Or the limbs of a guilt offering. Emuri Kachikachim. The limbs of a Kachikachim sacrifice. Emuri Kachim Kalim. The limbs of lesser holiness. Emuri Eivari Oila. What about the animal of all the limbs of the Oila Sa'if, or the bird? Minayin. How do we know all of those? Talmud Laimar, the pasuk says, Al kol karban chatak v'melach. On every sacrifice you have to bring salt. All of those require salt. Amar Mar. Let's go back and analyze this brisa. We had quite a long brisa here. Amar Mar, mainly, I would only know kaimetz. Minayin l'rabbi says Levina. How do we know the Levina also? So the Gemara says, Marbani yes Levina shkein boim ma b'kli yachad. I know the levina that needs salt, frankincense needs salt, because it comes in the same vessel. It says, why do you even have to say that? Just say that anything that requires something else to come along with it, which by the kaimetz meant that you need wood, by levina you also need wood. Why do you have to say? Because it comes in the same vessel. Achikama. Means to say is, Ema kar. Second. Yeah. And maybe we're going to learn it differently. Maybe when the Brisa went through this and it's tried to include Levina, and it says that I'm going to include the Levina because of it's brought in the same vessel. Maybe the Brisa was thinking that maybe there was another way of learning this. And Ema karban klal mincha prat. Pasuk said kol karban minchascha. Maybe karban would be more inclusive. Mincha was very specific. Klal prat im klal mash befrat. When I have a general law, a general statement, then I have a specific. The rule is that the specific limits the general, narrows it down. Mincha in midiachrin elai. I would only bring it for a karban mincha. So Hadarama, then the pasuk continues. It says, "I'll call karbancha chazer klal." Now instead of having a general specific, now I have a general specific general. Klal prat klal. Well, how does that work? You have to done el prat. Now the specific tells me everything that's similar to the specific. Ma prat mefur shachem b'im chayvulna. Just like the specific is that other things come along with it. That's the mincha, right? What's the general rule of a mincha is that you need to have something else there to burn it, which is wood. Anything else that would require wood to be burnt is going to require salt on it. What is something that comes along with it? Eitzim, it's wood. Afkal, eitzim, also anything that requires wood is going to require salt. Ema levina, maybe that's not the pshat. Maybe when we said that what comes along with the mincha, we said it's wood. Maybe no. Maybe what comes along with the mincha is levina. You got it all wrong. Which now you're going to include nothing. Nothing else has levina that comes along. And va'isi 1 second, jumped. It says va'isi dam dekanasachim. If that's the case, anything that something else comes along with it, then blood also has nesachim that come along with it. Right? It doesn't have wood that comes along with it, but it could have something else. What's libations comes along with the sacrifice. The Gemara says that's not a good now, which would tell me that I would need to salt the blood before I sprinkle it. It says nesachim b'hadei murim mudasu. The nesachim don't come with the blood; they come with the burning of the limbs. The question is, what is this coming along with in the libations? My time achila shtiya, because this the mizbeach eats and this the mizbeach drinks. Okay, adarabba. How do you know that that's the pshat? Maybe kapara v'simcha. Maybe it's atonement and joy. Right? What would be the atonement? The blood. Here's the joy: is the wine. Wine is joy. Rather, it says, very specific, that the reason why we're bringing the levina is not because the kaimet has the levina that comes along with it, but because it's in the same vessel. However, nesachim but the nesachim don't come in one vessel with the blood. So therefore, we're not going to have the blood as coming along. Aval eitzim, but the eitzim, the wood, the same way the wood comes along with the mincha, so too the wood comes along with every sacrifice, and every sacrifice we need salt. The Gemara says, maybe you have to be more specific about what's the uniqueness of a mincha. The mincha requires wood. We said so too. Anything else that requires wood is going to need salt. Maybe no. Mincha requires wood, and it also allows the mincha to be eaten, because the kaimetz requires wood to be burnt. So too, anything else that requires wood and allows something else, it has to be a matir. What else would be a matir? Levina haba bebazichen, the shayalechem, the frankincense that's brought with the showbread now allows the showbread to be eaten. So the frankincense needs wood, and it's also a matir that would be included. But no other karbanos. The Gemara says, but from the fact that the pasuk needs to tell me that you only have the minchascha, and which is excluding the blood, I need a pasuk to exclude the blood. That would mean that everything else is included. How is everything else included if it's not a matir? The answer is because I don't need to be a matir. I just need it to have wood that comes along with it. It's explaining to me how would I learn what needs to have salt on it and what doesn't. And we're saying that from the fact that it says me'al minchascha v'le me'al damcha, that's coming to tell me that everything else, which means you should not leave out the salt from the mincha, but it doesn't say you shouldn't leave out the salt from the blood. And the blood is fine not to have salt. You don't salt the blood. That's coming to tell me that everything else should be salted.
It doesn't every korban need to be burnt?
Yeah, and that's why. The fact that it needs to be burnt. And how does it get burnt? Because it needs wood. So to the mincha, in order for it to burn, it needs wood. And so the mincha needs salt, everything else needs salt. All the other sacrifices need salt.
Why are we jumping from A to B? I mean, we said if everything needs wood to be burned, why can't we stop there? Why do we then jump to the mincha? Oh, and by the way,
no, because when it came to the salt, the pasuk of the salt says, "Don't leave the salt off your mincha." It doesn't say about all the sacrifices. The salt says the mincha. How do you know all the other sacrifices? We do this comparison, just like the mincha, which requires wood to burn it. So to everything else that requires wood to burn it, that excludes the blood. Mar asks, Amar Mar, to be quoted in the Brisa that says, don't leave the salt off lisashbis, right? Don't leave the salt off the mincha. And it doesn't say don't leave the salt off your blood. How do you know it says specifically blood? You're implying that specifically the mincha doesn't need you should not leave out the salt, which tells me that implies but not the blood, it's fine to leave out the salt. Maybe it means the mincha, but not any other animal. No, animals are more similar to the mincha. It's the blood that's dissimilar. Why? Shekain Ashban Tmei Simon. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I have 7 things that compare the mincha to the.
Maybe the blood doesn't need the. We might have thought the blood doesn't need the salt because the blood naturally is.
The Gemara is going to bring that up. Next page. Achirim, not exactly that, but it's going to mention that. Achirim ba'im chayiv. First of all, that other things are required in order to offer it up, which means the wood. Achirim ba'im chayiv kamaisa, ishim kamaisa. It goes on the fire just like the mincha. Bachutz kamaisa. It's outside it's never brought inside the sanctuary. Naisa kamaisa. If you leave it overnight, it has the same laws. Tuma kamaisa. It has the same laws of impurity. Can become tummy. Me'ila kamaisa. If you have personal benefit from it, it's the same. Gemara says adarabba. On the contrary, dam havleila rebuye. Dam is more similar. Blood is more similar to the mincha. Shekain matir kamaisa, because it's a matir, right? It allows something else to happen. And nifsal b'shkias chama kamaisa, and it also becomes invalid at night. You can't sprinkle the blood at night. What's with the mincha? Can't offer the kaimitz at night either. It says b'yayim tzavase. However, the limbs of an ayla you can bring at night, so that's why. So the Gemara answers hanach nefish, and we had 7 versus 2, so 7 wins. So therefore, the comparison goes that way. Comparison is to the other limbs and to the mincha. Just like the mincha has salt, also the other ones have salt. Amar mar shmein kilo eitzim. We learned in the Brisa, I could have thought that maybe the wood requires salt if someone offers wood as a sacrifice, right? We were allowed to donate wood, or maybe dam, shenikru carbon. That's also called carbon. Man shamalei damar eitzim mikru carbon. Who says that wood is called a carbon? Rebbe. It's Rebbe. The Rebbe mibayi. If it's Rebbe mibayi melech. But Rebbe says that you require that wood actually does need salt. Oh, it says Titania. So in the Brisa, carbon, it says in the pasuk carbon malamichim. It's not the veitzim. That teaches me that you can donate wood to the temple. Bakama, if someone says I'm going to bring wood, how much wood does he bring? Shnei gezirim, 2 slabs. V'cheinuaymer v'garelas ipalnu al carbon eitzim, and it says in Nehemiah that they drew lots who's going to bring the wood. Okay, and it's called carbon eitzim. Rabbi Yamar eitzim. Carbon minchaim. L'tunim melach, l'tunim agasha. Rebbe says that the eitzim is considered carbon mincha, and you have to actually put the salt on it. You have to bring it close to the altar. You have to put it on that corner. Rava says you're going to require kmitza for it's so much of a mincha. Did Rava mean that seriously? Or was Rava saying it like a question? Do you have like a surprise mark there? Okay. Rav Papa says that the wood is going to require wood because you bring a carbon, you have to bring wood for it to. Samim mikan eitzim. So we're going to say here is that we have to erase eitzim from the brisa because we were saying that eitzim doesn't require salt. According to the one that holds that you do bring eitzim, that you do bring wood, you would require salt. So what's the pasuk excluding? If it's coming to exclude blood. You already told me that from on the mincha, but not from the blood. You don't have the salt. So what do we mean by when we say the comparison? What are we excluding? So the Gemara says, "Apik eitzim va'ayel nesachim." Take out the wood, and you're going to add in nesachim. That nesachim doesn't need salt. The libations, the tanya b'layayin v'adam v'eitzim v'akteris ein tunim melach. It says the blood, the wood, and ketores don't require salt. Mani, who holds this? Rebbe, if it's Rebbe, then kasha eitzim. Rebbe holds that wood doesn't require salt. Rabbanan, if it's Rabbanan, kasha ketores. You already told me in the brisa that ketores does need salt. Where it says Haitano, the Tanya, we're following the brisa, the following author. It says it's the Tanya was started in the brisa. Rabbi Shmuel ben Eishel, Rabbi Yechanan ben Breka Aimer, Ma Pram, first Davar Shemekabel Tuma Vailishim Yashnal Mezbeach Achitzan. just like what's specific, which is the mincha, is specific that it's mekabel tuma, and it goes on the fire, and it goes on the outer altar. Also, anything that is mekabel tuma goes on the fire, goes on the outer altar, is going to require salt. What are you including? Yatsu. This excludes wood. Shem mekabel tuma. Wood isn't mekabel tuma. We say that it is mekabel tuma. That's only rabbinic. Yatsu dam b'yayin shein elam lishim. The blood and the wine don't go on the fire. Yatsu k'tayres shein elam b'yachitzan. And k'tayres is excluded as well because it doesn't go on the outer altar. It goes on the inner altar. El time of the mighty krol adam. So then why do we have to exclude the blood? Halav hachiyav amina dam li b'ay melach. Even the malche nafikle mitaris dam. 1 second. Why do you have to why do you have to say that the blood that you don't salt the blood? If you salt the blood, it's not going to be blood anymore. If the blood is cooked, or if the blood is salted, it's not considered blood anymore. Rav Yehuda Didei Amar Evarim Shetzalan Behelen Ein Ben Mishum L'Reach Michayach. And Rav Yehuda says that if they're roasted already beforehand, then you can't put it on the fire because it doesn't give off a smell anymore. So the Gemara says, maybe we would just drop a little bit of salt on it, just for the mitzvah, but not that we consider the blood salted. We'll just do a little token salt. Mashmalan that you don't even do that. Okay, let's leave it over here. Okay, have a good day, everyone.
Rabbi Soloveitchik used this idea to describe the effect of salting meat. He said
that the blood doesn't become blood anymore.
It's no longer in the gutter of blood because it doesn't have the proper chemical composition. And you pull out the water.
Yitzi wants me to ask which Rabbi Soloveitchik.
Which one?
The brother of the important one.
Rabaran. Rabaran.
Yeah, he became a.
That makes sense. He's from Chicago. They're crazy about meat there. Any excuse?
No, he got a PhD, I think, in chemistry.
Oh.
And he used it to help him understand halacha.
Wow.
Okay.
Well, if you got a PhD in chemistry, it's a good start, right, Naftali?
Right.
Start. How many PhDs does Naftali have?
0. Okay, thank you.
Okay. Have a good day.